Barbara finish you signing that.
I'm fine, I can
No, I
follow
gotta
along.
send it to Phil, so I don't want to
We
do
can
that
handle this.
on camera.
Easier if it's kept together.
So the only one left would be Jim when he arrives later.
All you need
Okay.
is a majority. Do you have 4?
I'm going to open the meeting, folks, so get ready. GTV, we'd like to start. I'll give you 10 seconds. Good evening, everyone. This is the regularly scheduled Goffstown Planning Board meeting for April 14th, 2022. We normally begin with a roll call, so I will start with Dave Pierce.
Dave Pierce, an alternate member.
Barbara Griffin?
Karen Hughes.
Kimberly Peace.
Tim Redmond.
Gail LeBrecq, alternate and recording secretary.
Philip Devanza.
Carlos Adams, Select Board Representative.
Joanne Duffy, Planning and Economic Development Director.
Thank you, everyone. Okay. What was that noise? Oh,
There's
the
a
baby.
baby.
I thought somebody at the table was moaning. We
We haven't even started.
haven't even heard the application yet. Okay, the first order of business is the correction and acceptance of the minutes of March 24th, 2022. Joanne, could you explain why it's a correction acceptance motion? Or
Correction,
Required.
acceptance.
what it says on the action
Because I think, I don't know, to tell you the truth.
item? Okay, well, then we can move on.
Well, we asked for corrections first and then.
Was something corrected?
If, no, if you have
I
any
thought we always
corrections,
say that.
Yeah, it usually says that.
Yeah.
whether, if
It
you
always
have
says that.
corrections and then,
Oh, okay, I thought,
Then
it was- I
accept
don't
it.
remember reading that.
I don't.
Okay, does anybody have corrections for the
Well,
March?
first we need a motion to approve to get it on the table.
He's getting there, Phil. Give the poor guy a break.
Thank you.
Okay.
Somebody make a motion.
I just-
Somebody tell a joke.
I'll make a motion. Bring the minutes forward.
Okay, has a motion been made to accept the minutes of the 24th by Kimberly? Anybody want to second it?
I'll second it.
Second by Karen. Any discussion on the motion or corrections, I should say? Okay, there's no corrections. Call the motion to a vote. All those in favor of the minutes being accepted as presented, I'll say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. We obviously have something in our packet. Joanne, could you tell us about the recommendations
Oh,
for?
excuse me, I abstained, Gail.
You abstain?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was reading
David
something.
a voting alternate on that one? Or you
Yeah,
just
David
doing-
should have voted fine.
Okay.
Yes.
Jim is going to be down shortly, so David, you can vote until Jim gets here. Okay, we have, Joanne, could you tell us about the second action item?
So the second action item was, someone was interested in building a barn without, excuse me, on Incline Avenue, which is Class 6 road, and they would require the board's
To make a
comments.
recommendation.
However, it was denied by the zoning board, so it's not necessary to come in.
So there's no reason to comment on it?
No, because it's not going to the Board of Selectmen.
There's no open application at this point, it's been denied.
So this moves on to the next.
Jim, I apologize for being late, but I had to have a group client meeting by Zoom upstairs in one of your offices. Tom can charge for that part.
Could you add to the roll call your name, sir?
Jim Raymond.
Thank you. Later on, Jim, there's some papers here for you to sign.
Jim, how long were you using that office for?
43 seconds,
Chargement lawyer rates.
more or less.
Okay, we have,
My stuff doesn't remember the
we
password,
don't have any other
so I can
action
never
items.
get
We'll
on
move on to
the
the
internet
first new
enough to do
business
anything
item.
here. Oh,
Map 16, lot 172. Completeness review, conditional use permit waiver request. Joanne?
Okay, so with us this evening is Jordan and Alyssa Dupree, and they are here because they need 2 waivers and possibly a special I'm sorry, not a special exception, a conditional use permit. They live on the corner of Larch and Mass Road in Pinardville. And they purchased a property that had been subdivided back in 2018. And on the subdivision plan, there was a note stating that the original subdivision plan indicated that portions of the drive within 10 feet of the lot line were to be removed. And that was the owner of the subdivision at that time. Then in 2021, the applicant purchased the property, repaved the driveway, and was not aware that they needed a permit. And once it was discovered by Public Works, it was, there were many things that were needed. So they need 2 waivers. One is from Appendix A, Section 8C5, which is a 10-foot separation from the property line. Can you see the photo, or is it too
We have one in our
blurry?
packet, too.
Okay, so the driveway is paved up to the fence, which is the property line, so they're asking for a
It's in here
waiver to
somewhere.
not have
This
to
one, here it is.
remove that pavement that's already there, which is the 10 feet. And then the waiver number 2 is from Appendix A, Section 8C7, and that is for the width of the driveway. The driveway is paved at 28 feet, where 22 feet is the maximum allowed by the zoning ordinance. They may also need a conditional use permit for the separation of driveways between one from the next driveway over. However, if they remove the 10 feet, then that conditional use permit is not needed. DPW is more involved in this, and they have, at that point in time, when you're ready, they would like to explain more of the details of what's wrong with the driveway as it stands.
Board members?
Thank you. Joanne, did you just say that the driveway is 28 feet now?
Correct.
So if they remove 10 feet, they don't need the 22 feet exemption, correct?
Correct.
So if the 10 feet is removed, they don't need the 22 foot, and they don't need
The conditional use.
the conditional use in regards to the abutting lot driveway.
Correct.
So if we require them to remove 10 feet of the driveway,
Well, I'm sorry, it's 10 feet, if you look at the photo, it's 10 feet from the fence line that they would be removing, like over here. I'm not sure, if Scott could answer about the width, I'm not sure how that goes. There's also a drawing that Eric provided in the packet, which shows the inconsistencies of what is allowed and what's actually there now.
Well, before we have any more substantial discussion, we need a motion to,
It
Oh.
looks-
for
it looks like
acceptance.
that.
okay.
And so-
I find that, I
Sorry,
move that we
that's what I
find
should
that the, based on Joanne's explanation to us, that the application is complete, ready to be heard, and there's no regional impact.
I'll second. Are you going to waive the
What about the waivers, Jim?
waivers?
Oh, and accept it for hearing, acceptance purposes only without, accept the waivers for acceptance purposes only without acting, and reserving all rights to act on them on the merits. Thank you.
Second read.
I did second, yes, I'll second it.
So we have a motion to find the application is complete, ready to review with no regional impact, and for the waivers for discussion purposes only. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion passes.
I have a question.
So, I'd like to continue the board discussion with the planning director to begin. Barbara, were you completed at that point? I interrupted you.
Well, I guess I'm trying to get from the approved plan, which is the last thing in our packet, that, as Joanne referenced, said portions of drive within 10 feet of lot line to be removed. And the fact that apparently, based on the DPW drawing, even with the 10 feet removed, to be compliant, something else would have to happen. So maybe they can address that when they come forward, because I think we have a basic issue in regards to the plan versus,
Did you have something you can do?
that's it.
Barbie, on that subdivision that you're looking at,
On the plan?
on the plan itself,
Yeah.
there's a note that shows, if you look at the proposed subdivision line between the two properties.
Right.
There's a 10-foot notation, and then there's a note that says new edge of drives.
Yeah,
That's where they were to
right.
remove.
That's why I asked, that's what prompted me to ask about the 10 feet, because it looked like once you took the 10 feet out, you wouldn't need anything else. But when I looked at the DPW, it says to be fully compliant. It looks like there's something different than what would be the balance of pavement on the other side.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether the drawing was just not correct, and I'm assuming from all of this that the fence that I saw in the pictures is right on the property line.
It is, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So, any other board members have questions for staff?
I do, I have two questions, I think. And so, maybe Joanne, you can walk through a little bit more. Well, I guess first question, so we have a subdivision plan, we approved it, this was 2018. Who was ultimately responsible for not removing the pavement that was a condition of that plan
The owner of the subdivision
at the time?
at the time.
Okay.
But
No, I'm curious procedurally, I mean, and it never got done. Okay, so that's question number one. Okay, so I see that they came in for a driveway permit application in October. And,
That's when
DPW.
DPW discovered this and asked them to fill out a driveway application. And that's when Eric went out and did the plan showing like where it did not conform to our regulations, our driveway regulations. And, you know, we took a good look at it, and, I mean, he just had it paved, and it's a beautiful looking driveway. Unfortunately, it's too wide. I'm not sure what, I mean, the applicant can certainly explain this. I'm not sure what the yellow line means. I think he had an idea that he would cut some of it, but then it created other issues because it eliminated how many cars you could park there, as well as Eric wanted the 10 feet to be something that could have like shrubs and maybe some bark mulch or whatever. And then, you know, it was like, well, are they gonna drive on it anyway? So if it's not paved, they'll probably still use it to park. So there's a lot of things that come into play with this one.
I guess I'm just curious if there was an issue in October and they looked at it and they filed a driveway permit, were we leaving them time to correct this, or why are we seeing it now and not last fall?
Yeah, many things happened. They went to Florida for the winter, and then he was supposed to be on a more recent agenda within the last month or so, but then his grandfather passed away. So it's just been postponed by our office for many different reasons. So that's why they're finally here tonight.
And was the fresh paving before October, or is it between October and now?
I believe it was before October, but they can tell you that. But I'm almost positive it was before October.
Okay.
And that's when DPW drove by and said, oh, look, they don't have a driveway permit, and this was just recently paved.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right. Before you speak, Karen, Scott, would you please come up to the table and identify yourself? Because you can probably start answering questions, but let's get DPW up here at the table to start. For the record, sir?
Scott Ozana, town engineer.
Thank you. Karen?
So is the problem of the pavement that needs to be removed, that was old pavement, not what they paved?
Correct.
It was old, but then they went and
Repaved.
paved, they
Oh.
repaved the driveway.
Gotcha.
Over areas that, when the old subdivision was there was a garage in that area that had to come down. You know, it was a little different from what is shown now. It's not exactly the same.
Do you have this picture in your packet?
I think so.
That's what it looked like. This picture was taken in 2018. Eric just gave me this one yesterday.
I don't think
so-
we have that one.
I don't remember.
Actually, in our packet, there is a picture of the lot prior to the building being
Oh,
taken down.
right, we do
So
see
that
that.
But that was
shows,
an aerial.
what it looked like in 2018, so it was a concrete driveway. And they were supposed to cut it at the 10-foot setback. And we aren't really sure what happened in between 2018 and the driveway being paved. So all we know now is that someone noticed the driveway was paved recently. We went out and looked, and I believe it measures 38 and a half feet at the town right-of-way. And it's supposed to be the 22 with the 5-foot flares for 32 at the street. So that's what we found. So if it were to get cut back the 10 feet, Eric made that nice sketch, you'd still be required to kind of shape it at the right-of-way to make those flares at the road and get it to the 22 feet at the right-of-way. Let's see in that sketch there. I also believe that that yellow line that they have there is kind of what it would look like if they had to cut it back. Is that what that is? Yeah. So you see the yellow line where under the Jeep is the 10 feet, and then they've kind of
Oh, that's
have
the flare line, okay.
It
All right.
goes in at the right of way.
It looked
and
like
then
a
flares
triangle.
back out.
Yeah, no, I was
I-
really confused too, yeah.
Now, that's even more confusing, because if the line to be cut, a straight line under the Jeep out to the town road, why is there a jog in it? Nobody else's driveway in this town looks like that.
So
It
there's
is a
the
triangle.
10-foot setback.
Right,
That's
from
what
the
they need to
property
cut,
line.
Yeah, and then after they cut this back, the right-of-way line must be where this point is.
Oh, okay.
So they have to taper to the 22 feet at the right-of-way, and then they can flare back up to the
So
32
we're not calling the edge of pavement the right-of-way, we're calling the edge
No,
of
the
pavement.
right-of-way is, I don't know, like
5, 6 feet into
Yeah.
the property.
Do we commonly require the people to meet that requirement when the right-of-way extends in? I mean, I did a permit with the town, and I didn't have to do that on my driveway.
you didn't have to be 22 feet at the right-of-way, and with,
I am 22 feet at the
Okay.
right-of-way with flares, but I'm confused about the picture you have there.
yeah, it's in the packet.
So so is what you're talking about the fact that this particular driveway is wider than 22 feet? So if you only cut it back the 10 feet to meet the setback, your flare has to go in
Yeah,
more.
we
So
measured
we
it.
probably wouldn't, if we were approving it in the first instance, would have just kept the driveway at 22 feet, so you
Yeah,
wouldn't
we're
see the
measuring
flare.
it at 38
Okay.
and a half feet right
Okay.
now. The full is what the full width is.
Any more board members have questions for our town engineer? Jim?
Just to be clear, are there any drainage issues or any other particular issues that you could see that would affect how we assess this?
No, we haven't noticed any drainage issues with this pavement.
So if nobody has anything else for the town engineer, I'll ask Scott to return to the gallery, and we'll invite the applicants to come up and identify themselves and tell us what you'd like to hear, what you'd like us to hear.
John Jordan Dupuy. This is my soon-to-be wife, Alyssa. So I'll explain this picture real quick. So the driveway, the property line is the fence. 10 feet off the property line would be where the straight yellow line is, right underneath the driver's side wheel. And then the flare, so meeting the property line at the right-of-way would be 22 feet right here, and then it can have the extra 5-foot flare out. And so that's that triangle that you're seeing. When we purchased the house last year, the driveway was paved here and then had the concrete to the property line. So it kind of looked like the driveway. The concrete never got removed prior to the subdivision. It got removed on this side of the fence so he could sell the property, but it never got removed on this side of the fence. 2 or 3 years later, we ended up buying this property. I had no idea that you needed a permit to repave an existing driveway, or I would have got one because we're right on the main road. So I would have got it, I wasn't trying to hide anything. I got the driveway repaved. the next day, DPW knocked on my door, and then that's how all this started. All we're trying to do is, well, first of all, we have three cars. The driveway is just big enough for 3 cars. Part of the width of the driveway right here, so our entrance to get in our house is right here. So we kind of use this as a walkway for the mailman, UPS drivers, etc. So we took that into consideration when we did the driveway.
Yeah, so instead of just doing like pavers or something for a walkway, we just had them
Pave the whole thing.
pave over. So 4 feet of that is technically walkway, which in this picture, we parked the car on what would be the walkway.
You
but
should
fit
have a picture in your packet
cars.
of the walkway.
George, do you own the lot next door or only the lot that we're talking about right now?
I own both lots.
You own both lots.
Yes.
The lot further in Lark, that's, appears to be a construction equipment lot. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's equipment on the lot.
It is zoned for small business.
Yes.
Board members, have any questions for the applicant? Did you receive the subdivision maps when you bought the property? Did you read the subdivision maps that showed where the driveway had to be removed?
I received the subdivision maps for the Wright property, not the 640 Mass Road property.
Well, it's the same map, that's why I'm asking.
Um,
This map that's in the packet.
Well, at the time, I didn't receive that paper when I bought the 640 Mass Road property. I did receive the map when I bought the other property.
So did you, can I?
Please.
It was 3 years difference. So I bought the right side property in 2018, and then I just bought 640 Mass Road last year of May or June.
In May.
So you got this map when you bought the first parcel,
In
right?
2018.
So you had the map in hand that showed where the driveway's cuts were supposed to be made.
The cuts were made on our side. I think the problem is that they weren't
Made on the
house we
640
just
Mass
bought.
Road side.
The subdivision map is what's king, not what's there when you buy it,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Other board members, questions? Aaron, you said you wanted to ask a question?
No, I was gonna piggyback on what you did, so it's already been answered.
Excuse me. Oh, Barbie's there? Yeah, just speak up.
All right, thank you. So let me try and understand, because I actually don't remember this subdivision
Neither
plan.
do I, honestly.
I don't, which is
I
really
missed it.
pretty unusual,
I
but,
missed the meeting, obviously.
I-
Spent a lot of time in this.
did we?
Yeah, we did.
Well, apparently I blanked it from my mind. So I'm looking at the picture that, the aerial photo that was supplied to us by staff. I don't know, have you seen this, of what the property was like back at the time apparently we did the subdivision? Joanne, do you have one that you can just slide over? It's in the packet.
That's in our packet.
There's an aerial photograph in the middle of the packet.
Oh, the aerial photo?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
aerial.
Yeah,
Don't go by these lines though, because they're not correct.
right, because our map, all right,
Yeah,
but
I
just,
haven't seen that.
but it's not, but what it does show, which is what the plan shows, is that that garage building right, sort of very close to Large Street, was supposed to come down.
It did.
It did.
So when you bought the lot in 2018, had that been taken down, or was that what you did after you bought the property?
Yeah, so when I bought the lot, in order for me to purchase the lot, the garage had to be torn down and the fence needed to be installed, and all the concrete on the right side of the property line that I
Which we
purchased had to be removed.
When-
Nothing-
Which we did.
Which was all done before
Yeah.
we purchased the property.
So the seller made that a contingency for you to do?
Yes. it
Yes,
was,
for the property 16172-1.
Okay, so, and I'm asking that because on the plan that we're all looking at, it says, you know, garage to be raised, paved drive to be removed. And there was a proposed subdivision line, and I actually don't see anything about a fence, but, okay.
Can I ask procedurally then? There's a condition in this approval minutes that said driveway permits from BDPW, new driveway permit for new lot, modification for the existing driveway. So were 2 driveway permits supposed to be sought by the owner at that time?
Well, typically, when you have conditions on a plan, if they pertain to either who ever owns it or who's going to be developing it. But that sat that way for 3 years.
Okay.
And I don't know what happened in the meantime between 2018 and 2021. I don't know if
Okay, so,
they were
just
trying
so
to
I
sell
understand,
it.
so we made this approval, you're not looking at 172, you buy 171, the seller says, in order to transfer it, you have to do this, remove this and take the garage down, which it turns out happens to be part of the plan approval, and you buy 172-1, the new lot.
Correct.
Okay. And then last year you buy 172, what we refer to as the existing lot that was before you were subdivided. And were there any conditions on that purchase?
No.
Okay, and was it from the same seller or a different seller?
Same seller.
From the same seller.
Yeah.
Okay, so you purchased it from
Falcon Heights.
Falcon Heights
Yes.
last year. Okay.
I'd like to go back to your question, Kimberly. about
Oh,
the-
sorry, can I just follow up? So if you had torn the garage down, right? As
Yes.
part, so you would have to go on to that other lot technically to tear that garage down, right?
No, I don't think the garage met the setbacks. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, no, sorry,
I
that's
think-
something that's irrelevant for you. Clearly, the owner of the other lot benefited from you taking the garage down because it was on their side of the lot line. But when I look at the photo that I think you passed around in regards to the driveway, so the garage was over here,
Yes.
back here where this pavement is?
Yep.
So I'm trying to figure out where the 10 feet of driveway up to the road was.
Was there none, and then it was paved?
It was concrete.
It was concrete.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they did
Because-
between 2018.
Where is the fence in relation, if I was to hypothetically put the fence,
is-
would I even see it in this picture, or is it
No, yeah,
further?
you
No,
would see it. It would be right in the middle, keep going left, like right
Probably
there.
there.
So it would be in the middle of this grassy
Yes.
edge? Okay.
And I think what happened, I'm not too sure, but what I think has happened is some of that concrete got moved, because I think Falcon Heights rented that house out for 3 years. So to make extra parking, instead of hauling the concrete out, I think the concrete just got dispersed somewhere in there,
It was
and
in
it looked like one big driveway.
Because they
Is
were
that
parking
pic-
on it, they were parking on it, I mean.
Because that picture's before all the work got done.
So
That's
Barb,
right, okay, it's 18. Okay, thank you.
Well, I'd like
All right,
to-
I'm done, thank you.
We'll start with you, Barbara. You had about the driveway question. When they created the second lot, there was an existing driveway that fed into the garage that had to be raised. So that, from the property line to that line they drew, edge of new drive, that 10 feet needed to be removed because you can't have a driveway within 10 feet of the lot line.
Thank you.
So that's what that question is.
No,
And to go to Kimberly's question, driveway permits required from DPW for proposed lot on 172-1. There was no driveway at the time, so in order to put a driveway in here, you need a driveway permit. And for the modification to existing driveway on lot 172, which is, per plan, required to remove that driveway. So that's why they required the 2 permits apparently. So because the plan dictated that a piece of that driveway had to be removed. It's a modification to an existing driveway.
Right, that, I wasn't confused about that, I just, those conditions were
I
never
misunderstood.
completed.
Right, I think.
David?
Yeah.
Mr. Dupree, when you bought the 172-1 property, in what manner did Falcon Heights inform you to remove the garage and remove some concrete on that?
That, I was informed that that needed to be done before the purchase of the
In
lot.
what manner did he inform you? Did he give you this drawing, or did he give you some other directions?
Verbal, probably.
Yeah, probably verbal.
Thank you.
Yeah. It was just part of it.
So, my point is, perhaps Mr. Dupree didn't see this drawing on that first purchase. Mr. Chair, I'd like to present some information too.
Go ahead.
Relevant to this situation. Today, I drove the portion of Lark Street that the applicant is on. There's 24 parcels on that street having driveways. 15 of the 24 have driveways within 10 feet of the boundary line. That's 60% of all the parcels are within 10 feet. 5 parcels have driveways over 22 feet wide. That's 20% of the parcels on that street. 2 parcels have 2 driveways, which I suspect weren't approved. There's another 3 parcels which people are just parking in the front yard on grass, because just to get them off the road, and of course there is a regulation about not parking forward of the front of your house unless it's on the driveway. So I asked the board to take all that into consideration when you consider is the waivers here, are they unusual for the community on that street? Well, I'm suggesting perhaps they're not that unusual.
Well, if I may state that those are probably pre-existing non-conforming driveways that were done before any of this was fabricated, and as well as they may not part of a new subdivision which had a drawing
Still,
and stated
I
specific
offered it
conditions.
as the nature of the neighborhood too. So,
Okay. Any other members of the board want to speak?
I have a question. Are there any issues with the driveway access to the new lot, -1, the one you bought first? I guess I'll ask you or the town engineer.
If the 10 feet goes away, there's no issue, because then it meets the 40-foot separation. If the 10 feet isn't cut back, then there's only 30 feet of separation.
All right, but the lot that's one in, the -1 lot, there are no issues if you look at that lot independently with the driveway.
With which, so
Unless-
the driveway on the -1 lot is placed so that it is within 30 feet of the existing driveway now on
The parent lot.
the parent lot. So
But it's 10 feet from the property line.
it's 10 feet from the property line, but it doesn't meet the 40-foot required separation per the zoning ordinance.
But
Right,
it's
so we could have-
It's the appropriate width, it's
Yeah.
just the separation.
It
But this,
currently doesn't have a
so we
waiver.
could have an argument for hours over who's causing the problem in the separation, right? The parent lot or the new lot, right?
Right.
Which is why there's an additional waiver needed as to the driveway
Right.
in the parent lot. Okay. So the -1 lot independently is fine.
Correct. And it wasn't in the beginning, but Eric worked with them and got it straightened out so that it did meet the regulations.
Oh,
It's
all
just
right.
that separation is the issue.
Remaining issue.
Mhm.
Okay.
Phil?
Thank you. I have a recollection when this came back and we had a discussion with it. And I understand the information that David presented about the neighborhood. But one thing you have to remember about the neighborhood, this neighborhood, a lot of this neighborhood existed before zoning.
Right.
Okay? One thing is, we have zoning. We had an owner that came in and wanted a subdivision. Okay? So he benefited from the subdivision, and there were certain requirements to meet the current zoning. Now, we have lot line orders on the property, because part of it is because they're dense lots. So you want to have some space between the property lines. And I remember we had that discussion with this, and there may have been a request for a waiver. I'm not 100% positive at the time dealing something with this, and it didn't happen. The point is the benefit of the subdivision. And if you go to subdivide the property, you're accepting the current zoning. Okay? So with the current zoning, and we have many people that come in, and when we have the small lots, you want to keep the space, sidelines, okay? And that's one of the important things in here, and we had quite a bit of discussion of this, and the property owner didn't have a problem with removing that and planting grass or whatever he was gonna have when they removed the concrete and stuff. So, I understand what the neighborhood is, but when people come in for a subdivision and they have the benefit of the subdivision, now they have 2 lots. There's a reason why we have the zoning, then, you know, just, we should have just, if that was the case, then just let them subdivide it, just remove the garage and leave it the way it is, or cut part of the garage off and leave the garage. We don't need to have side limits, the garage can go right up. I mean, people come in and they want the garage right next to the lot line. We don't allow it. They have to go to CBA.
Kimberly?
I'm just particularly frustrated about the process where we approved a subdivision, and as Phil said, we approve a lot of subdivisions. We spent hours in this room that I'd love to be at home watching Netflix, drinking a beer. And then we get plans like this, and like, oh, it got done and nobody did it. That just makes me lose my mind. I just can't even. Falcon Heights made a mistake. That mistake got carried forward. Somehow that should have been enforced. Now, whether or not it's the current applicant and they have to take it up with Falcon Heights, or whether we go back and yell at Falcon Heights, but we worked on this, Jim, you, Phil, we were here, we worked on this. This is wrong. I'm really irritated by that.
Mr. Chair, we're talking amongst ourselves now, we should close the public hearing if we're gonna.
Did we open the public hearing?
Well,
Yeah,
we're in a
we're
public
still
hearing.
discussing it. We'll open the public hearing when
Well, we've had the applicant speak.
I'm still letting board members speak.
I know, but I think that the applicant is still at the table as if we're hearing from them in regards to the presentation, and I think if we're done with them, we usually open the public hearing after we
And then we can
hear
debate
the
among
applicant.
ourselves, so I think we should.
All right, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Because we've been talking among ourselves, and they're looking very confused about what we're talking about.
Well,
They have
they've
no
also-
idea.
They've also been answering some questions that
Yeah,
have gone
they've
through.
been great, yes, they have
So I
been.
didn't really feel like it was time to ask them to sit down.
Okay, that's it.
So if you have anything else you'd like to add, you can come back and speak. This is not your final speak. If you have something else you'd like to add after our discussions, we will welcome you back up. So,
Awesome.
So if you folks could just step back to the gallery for a moment, or not, because we're going to open a public hearing and there's nobody here, so. So at this point, I'm going to open the public hearing, and if anybody from the public would like to speak on behalf of this application, now's the time to do it.
We often hear from children on behalf of their parents. Are we ready for that yet or not? All right.
All right, seeing there's no one here, we're going to close the public hearing. Board members, do you have any other items you'd like to discuss or questions you'd like answered?
I'm assuming, listening to Kimberly, I'm assuming we can't do anything to Falcon Heights, since they're no longer on the property. That's
No.
my assumption, yeah, so. Okay, that's all I had.
Well-
I'm going to make a motion, regretfully, but I think we should deny the request, the waivers, for the reasons that Phil and Kimberly said, that the plan has clear requirements. It was a condition of the subdivision. It's a matter of public record in the title. The applicant had at least constructive knowledge, and it appears he did have an actual copy of this. So he was on notice of its requirements, and there was a purpose of doing that. And we did spend a long time on this property, and went through the issues of the neighborhood and the zoning requirements with the goal of seeing if we can allow a subdivision under some tight constraints, and these are the conditions we put on them. So I'm sorry that the applicant is in this position, but I don't think we can just waive it under the, oh, well, they made a mistake. So I'm going to move that the applicant has not met its burden of proof on the waiver request, and we deny them.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Kimberly. There's a motion to deny the request of the waivers based on the testimony and the subdivision plan. Any discussion on the motion by board members?
So what would the applicant be required to do in terms of the removal then?
I will ask the town engineer to speak to that exactly.
Yeah.
Before he speaks, can I just say one thing? They are also requesting a conditional use permit. And that would be for the distance between the two driveways, so are
Well,
you?
isn't that, if they
Right,
have
so
to...
do you want to add that
I do,
to the motion?
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
I'll confirm my second to that as well.
So you, motion to deny waivers and the conditional use permit. Been seconded again. So, Scott, could you please explain, answer the question for Karen?
Yes, so DPW recommends that the driveway get cut into basically the compliant shape that's on.
That,
Yeah, but it also.
No, there's a drawing with
So-
hash marks
so
in your
this
pocket.
could be cut a little differently, that they can then do one on this side as well to not make this so, the way they're read in your packet, there's that, it's that colorful one.
Right.
So the red shape, it's kind of hard to see with all the different ones, so the red hatching would be a full compliant driveway. So you can see it kind of scallops in there and there as
Right,
well.
I've been looking at it, now I can't find it.
I mean, if they didn't want to cut
Yeah.
both sides, they could just cut the side closest to the -1 parcel a little further to get the 22 at the right-of-way line. And then we'd like to see, currently they have a fence up that's along the that's basically right on the property line. And as Joanne said, maybe some plantings or something, but I don't know how we enforce plantings, so, I mean, just, grass. or-
would they have to remove the fence in order to
No.
take
I
the
don't
pavement out?
believe so.
Okay.
All right, we have any other questions before we call for a vote on this matter? Seeing none,
I don't have any questions, but I'm going to make a comment. At a certain point, and I appreciate this board because, I would have liked to have seen this in, when did they buy it? March? I would have liked to have seen this in February of last year, when the previous owners still owned the property. And I'm going to look across to my Board of Selectmen representative. At a certain point, the town needs to start assuming responsibility for non-compliance with approved plans and regs. We are not paying attention to staffing in town hall. The zoning code enforcement in this town, we have a vacancy, and I understand that there's an advertising, but it has been an issue for years. And I will tell you that DPW has been wonderful, because there have been other driveways that I've driven by and called, and they've been on top of it. But this is not the only issue, and we have tax-paying members of the public who don't necessarily know about plans or what needs to be done, and rely on people who do a lot of business in this town, in this particular case, or not. And we've had, stuff has happened for years and nobody says anything. It's our zoning enforcement until, a zoning code enforcement of many years ago has been by complaint or by notice. And we have no staff able to go out, and DPW, I'm not complaining about DPW because DPW does the best, but if this is on this plan, as somebody said, I can't even imagine what goes on a bunch of the other stuff that we approve and nobody ever looks at again. And I'm going to vote against the motion only because I think we should require the 10 feet to be removed. For them to do the flare, I probably would have asked questions about the 22-foot limit at the right-of-way, and, you know, I appreciate that DPW would like some shrubbery along the fence, but, I mean, that is, we're either going back to the plan or not, but, I mean, I'm upset as Kimberly is, but there's a component of my frustration that is with the town, that this kind of stuff goes on, and, you know, this guy got seen. And I think the other one, the most recent driveway one, which was on Mass, that got caught on the Union Street side of it, was because somebody had new paving put down. So you drive by and you sort of go, whoops, you know. So, I mean, I get it, we need to enforce our plans, but it should have never gotten this
Barbara,
far.
can I have some clarification?
Yeah.
So what is your ask of the select board, and what message would you like me to carry back to the select board?
It's a message that the select board has heard from me before, but maybe now in public session. The select board needs to start paying attention to staffing in town hall, and it needs to provide adequate staff to provide the support to town people in the town hall and adequate support in connection with the plans that are approved in this town and zoning enforcement. And it's hasn't been happening for a few years.
I'd like to halt the discussion right now.
Sorry.
This is not.
Sorry, you're right.
the application.
Sorry, you're
We
right.
can talk about this after this application has been adjudicated. So at this point, there's a motion
Yep.
to deny the waivers and the conditional use permit and require the applicant to restore the driveway as per plan for the subdivision plan. Is that correct, Jim?
Correct.
Okay, it's been made by Jim, seconded by Kimberly. I'm going to call for a vote on the motion. All those in favor of denying the waivers and the conditional use permit, say aye. Aye. Opposed? 2. Abstentions? None. So unfortunately, you're going to have to make your driveway comply with the subdivision plan and remove it 10 feet and work with DPW to be in compliance.
What was the ending vote?
Two noes, Barbara and Karen.
I got a
Karen?
quick question. What stops us from putting Wallstone parking on it?
Nothing.
Alright,
That's the fact.
alright. Because we're gonna have to. No, there's no.
We don't want to hear that from you, please. Just do what you gotta do.
I know,
Do what you
but,
gotta do. We
Alright.
we appreciate your honesty, but
yeah,
in a public forum, that's not the best place to make the statement.
alright,
Thank you.
yeah.
So before, I'd like Scott to stay after too, if he would, please. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Sorry, my apologies to the board and the applicant,
So,
but
Barbara, you may continue your discussion with the public at this time.
I'm done. This is not a new
Okay.
issue for
So,
this
I would
board
like to
or me.
also, I'd like to kind of chime in on what Barbara has said, because we approved a driveway, a subdivision on Tyrrell Hill Road, just go past the Blackbrook Fire Station, and Mr. Tamzarian got a subdivision of 2 parcels there, and the house had 2 driveways. And we required Mr. Tamzarian to remove a piece of the driveway so that the second driveway would go away. Well, they put Nitpac in and they still used the second driveway.
Right.
So that was a waste of all of our time and effort to even talk about it at the meeting. We should have required that Mr. Tamzarian do something substantial, like put trees in or build a stone wall or something that would preclude the use of that driveway, because this is another application that has the same problem. No enforcement after the fact. Jim?
This is a discussion when we get to our regs, but knowing the spottiness of enforcement, one thing we can do is, as a condition to signing the plan, make it a precondition.
Yes.
And we leave them as what I call conditions subsequent,
Scott, you can come up to the table if you
and
want.
they disappear. So what we should have done is said, we will sign this plan after you remove the
We can make
Are
you,
you suggesting field verification?
before we file,
As a
sign the
requirement?
plan,
Okay,
not
just want to be
after.
clear.
I agree with that statement. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
That takes the zoning enforcement out of the issue.
Yep.
But in the regs, there's also some statement about, you know, they can't do anything on the property until the plan is signed.
Correct. So give them an incentive to get the work done. And you can waive that. There are regulations, and you say, no, it's a condition of approval. We will sign this when it's removed.
That's a good idea.
And that would not have stopped anything on this property, because while it was still a single lot, you can permit to tear a garage down before the plan is approved and restore the driveway to the 10-foot separate setback, and then the plan could be signed.
Attention to the meetings.
Happy day. Any other discussion on this, or anything for the town engineer while he's still here?
Unless you have any questions of us.
Do you have any questions for us, Scott?
Not right now, maybe in the
Well,
future.
thank you for-
He's like, I just wanna go home.
Be honest.
Yeah, he's like, I want to get out of here.
Thank you, Scott, and feel free to bug out.
I don't have any questions either, man.
You won't see me for the next meeting, I'm on vacation that week, but Eric will be
Wait,
here.
you just started your job. You're on vacation already?
It's my
Jeez.
kid's school vacation.
Selective. Have fun. Have a good time.
Can I
But
just,
you'll be in good hands with Eric.
can I just ask a question? I know there's no answer to it, but,
Well, gee, thanks.
so if they can go ahead and remove that pavement and put mulch down and park on it, isn't it better that it's paved and they're
No,
parking on it?
because it meets it complies with the plan.
I know, but it just
It's-
seems so silly.
No, it's not
That
silly.
the regulations,
It's not silly.
it's better to be parking on pavement.
No, it's not. It's better not to park there at all.
For environmental reasons, so in case
Joanne,
there's
that
a
goes,
leak.
goes back to one of my comments when I did my survey of Clark Street. There already is a regulation in town that you cannot park forward of the front of your house unless the car is on the driveway.
Well,
Yeah, we changed it one year.
No one ever would enforce that.
I understand, but there is a rule on that.
Right.
Well, it was like the old
That
motorhome.
has, thanks.
Yes.
Can I-
Yeah,
That-
you
that
can't
goes
live in
back- That goes back to zoning.
Well, no,
Goes
it's
back to
supposed to be
motorhomes,
parked
if I'm
in your
not
side
mistaken.
yard
Side
or
yard,
your
yeah.
backyard.
It's an ARPA.
And to make a point, Joanne, I know that the subdivision regs are being reviewed right now, and I'd like to, I can email Heidi, but pavement and nit pack and packed gravel are impervious surfaces. Mulch will eventually become slightly pervious. So you can park and park and park on it, but it's still gonna be slightly pervious. So we do actually have true stormwater achievement by using that removal of pavement. So there is something of that. But if our rules say pavement, and, per DOT standards, pavement includes nit pack and gravel. But if we don't specify that in our rules and people are throwing gravel instead of pavement and saying, that's, that should be definitely clarified. Because you can't rip out the pavement and put in gravel. Now, you
Right.
can put in mulch because it still has some pervious capability.
And we've had that exact discussion in other areas in Pinardville where we didn't want pavement and there was asked if you could put gravel. And it was going back a while ago when Megan was here. And she's the one who said, no, it's the same thing. I think it was, but it was down at North Garden. When North Garden came in to do the stuff in the back, we
Oh,
had
in
that
back.
discussion with it.
Yeah, that's right.
And we said, no, it was the same. So I think it's important that when we, like that one other one that you brought up, that if you say no about the paving, well, paving is also nick back and what
Correct.
it's all these things you can't put in there.
And from an engineering perspective, that's why we should be talking about impervious versus pervious.
Correct.
Because all of those surfaces that you mentioned are impervious
Correct, right,
and considered impervious from an engineering perspective.
right.
So
But not mulch.
Right. So if somebody was told to remove a driveway and they put nit pack down,
Unless the mulch
you
is
can
on top of
win.
nit pack.
You actually, you're still doing the same thing.
Still a driveway.
It's still a violation.
So can I just ask, so is that, you said state rules, paved driveway, nit pack, gravel is considered the same thing?
I'd have to go back and check where the rule is in the state rules, but.
You just said I
gravel-
didn't.
Gravel and nit pack are impervious.
Classified.
Oh, okay, well,
Yes.
no, I expected,
Somewhere in the
I
state
was,
rules it
you
is.
did not disappoint me because I expected to hear impervious from you by the time we finished this
It's under the
discussion.
elevation training.
Yes, okay, thank you.
All right,
All right,
okay.
before we get
Because
an
I know.
adjournment motion from Phil, there is cistern regulations on the table for everybody to take home tonight and
We also have to
review
do-
prior to we have a discussion with the fire department at a later date.
Motion to adjourn.
Don't, wait, EDC and CIP.
I know, I said before we adjourn. I didn't say.
Well, he made a motion.
Phil always makes the motion, we have to just wait. So, this is what, please, Dave.
Joanne, are there applicants for our next session?
Yes. they're on
For our
the-
next
they're on the
session, so
agenda.
it's changed a little. We're having lots of issues with TF Moran. So the next
What does that mean exactly?
I'll tell you in a second. The next agenda is April 28th, and initially we had down Starbucks.
Right.
Which they're going to ask for a continuance.
Okay.
Because, remember all of the outstanding items that were
Yeah.
on the last agenda? Well, they promised me that they would have the revised plans to us by this past Monday, and it's Thursday, and I still didn't have anything. So I wrote to them and said, where are the plans? If I don't have them by the end of the day, you're done. We're not putting you on. And the engineer never wrote back. It was the owner, or the applicant, I should say, who wrote back and said, oh, we're still trying to figure out, to your point about having an extra
Lane.
They're trying to figure out how to, they don't have enough room, so that's basically what the issue is. And then I had asked them for renderings of what it would, what the apartments in the back there would be looking at, because their second story, the first story probably won't see much of anything, but the second story will. It'll be looking right out onto this. And they're working out the details of those plans. So they said, oh, can we continue it to, I think it's May 12th meeting. And they have to have everything in by the 22nd of this month. So that's the plan so far. We'll probably, I did ask them to put it in writing for, a request to the board, so we'll have that. Then the Hawks Motorsports project, there's a question as to whether or not they have true frontage. And because of the fact that the rail trail runs in front of their property along Mast Road, and there's a question as to whether or not, that maybe David could explain this better than me, but there's a question about whether or not there's actual frontage there that belongs to the applicant versus crossing over town property. And so they're insisting, their surveyor's insisting that they have the frontage, and he provided a letter with his reasoning. Derek had former paperwork from earlier from some other applicant that he was reviewing, and today he came out and said he doesn't believe that we do have the frontage. So now it's been sent to the town attorney for further review, and I don't know whether we're going to be going forward. I'm waiting to hear back from the applicant because the letters have to go out tomorrow if they are going on for the meeting of the 28th.
So at this point, if both applications are removed,
So that we have two others taking their place.
taking their place,
We have a grade issue with one of the driveways on Walnut Hill Road. You probably remember this from before. The owner's name is
Steve
Feborino or something like that.
Steve Fabonio.
Fabonio.
From Strategic?
No, that's
No.
Rob Starr.
No.
Oh, that's Rob Starr's.
Fabonio was right on the Bedford line, remember?
Right,
the
yeah,
lot
no,
right
I
up on the
remember, that was a
mountainside?
while ago, yeah.
So everyone is fine with what he wants to do, but it does need planning board approval because it exceeds the 10%. It's like 11 something. Fire department's good with it. He even brought in a fire hydrant. He installed a fire hydrant coming in from the Bedford side because he's using their public water, and it's placed right at the bottom of his property, so he has fire protection there.
Okay. And what's
And
the
there's
other one?
one other one, let me think a minute, there was the medical building on Mast Road, but now they need to go to the conservation, and they need to,
I don't know, I
go
don't
to
know about the
zoning
medical
board.
building on Mass Road.
you know where the medical building is on Mast Road?
Oh, there's an
The
existing
brick-
building?
Yeah,
Oh.
they just wanna make some changes to
Oh,
their
okay,
parking,
okay, all right.
but it infringes into the surface water
Second.
buffer, so that needs a little bit more
Is that
work.
the one behind the show?
No, it's,
No,
if
it's
you go down.
across from the old Shaw's Plaza.
It's right.
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
that one.
yeah.
No, it's right here on, if you go down Mast
Oh,
Road.
this one, the
Used to be an
Danny's?
Elliott,
Yeah.
used to be an
Danny's?
Elliott
Okay.
family,
Yeah.
now
Yeah,
it's
no, I
Dairy.
know,
No,
okay.
it's what?
Now it's Dairy Medical.
Oh, okay.
I've
Oh,
lived
it's
here too
Dairy
long, I
Medical.
just refer to it as the builder's name.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know who that is.
And there's one other one, so they're being postponed. there's one other one that came in, so I think there'll be two altogether, I just can't remember what the other one is.
All right, well, you can
Right.
put it on our agenda
Well,
first.
I won't be here, I'm on
We've been
vacation.
so busy,
School
it's
vacation.
unbelievable how busy we
Yeah.
are
Okay,
right
good.
now. Okay, so that's the story for the next meeting, and then on this agenda, we have appointment of the CIP committee and appointment of the planning board member to EDC.
Okay. So the first item on the agenda is appointment to CIP committee. Do we have a nomination for our past chair to continue from anyone?
I'll make it.
I'll second it.
Will you accept?
If nominated, I'll not run. If elected, I'll not, oh, wait, Sherman used that. no.
What?
That was General
That-
Sherman. You should have been one of my history students, you'd know that. Yes, I'll do it again.
Okay, so Jim has accepted, has stated publicly that he will run the committee. So did you make the motion, Phil?
Yes, I did.
Karen, did you second
I
it?
did.
So there's a motion to appoint Jim as the chair of the CIP committee once again.
Can I condition on Phil giving us a Devanza clockwork sweatshirt?
No, you- That's coming in the federal stimulus package. So any discussion on the nomination? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, it passes. You're the new chair again, James. Appointment of members, Joanne, what do we have?
So we have Gail, Kimberly, let me write this down here. This is for,
Okay, so what does the ordinance say our membership of the CIP committee is?
so I don't have it with me this
It
week.
You sent
says-
it an
Talked about
email.
it last week.
There was a-
It's probably in the minutes.
Has
It
three.
says three.
No, it's not in the minutes. There's very little in the minutes from last
Handbook.
week. It's,
Didn't we see the handbook?
We got an
Yeah.
email about the, and it
Last
can't,
time.
it has to be an odd number of,
It had three community members,
yeah.
and a planning board representative, which is me, a budget committee, a school committee, and a select board representative.
It does say that you're the only allowed planning board member to be on it.
Yes, the
Right.
only voting planning board,
And
which I
it has to be
objected to,
in-
but it hasn't been changed.
Odd number
It is, it's,
of seats.
that's the 3 plus the 4
Yeah.
other, sort of quote, other boards.
But there wasn't a limitation, if I recall.
well, three is the number, so if it says three, three's the number. It's
Yeah.
not 3 or 5 or 7 or 9.
Okay.
It's 3.
Correct.
So there was a member from the select board, a member from the school board, a member from budget committee. Then there's Jim as the chair from planning. Then there was Gail, who was a community member.
Community at large.
And Kimberly was the
And
same.
Brad,
And Brad Parker.
And Brad Parker's. And then there was the other man
Yeah,
who was the new one.
Steve, not Steve,
No.
what's his name?
Brian?
Um,
No. It was good, I went back. on it.
He wanted to come back. He
Yeah,
sent
no,
in an
no,
application.
he was, did last, sorry, gosh.
So that means
I
one
can't think
of
of his
our,
name.
somebody has to step down.
Well, so we had 4 other people last year? If Kimberly
No,
was
do-
on it
Do we
again?
call Kimberly from the planning board?
no,
I
it
can't remember.
was a member.
No, I was
Because,
a community at large.
And so was Gail.
So we had 4? Because you're saying Steve, Brad, Gail, and Kimberly.
Daniel O'Connor.
Dan, yeah,
Danielle.
yeah,
Danielle, I believe, was a community member.
yes.
And
Steve.
Brad.
Will it be listed on the
On the
cover of your-
website,
Will it be
right?
listed on the cover of your, last year's CIP
Yeah,
book?
Yeah.
No, they're all
yearly, everybody's yearly.
No, but last year, when you do the cover page for CIP, you list the members normally, for the CIP book. I saw 11 of them, I knew.
Here's the list right here.
Hmm?
Here's the list right
Last year?
here. Yes.
How many community at large did you have?
We had 4.
4, so we were illegal last year with
Okay,
4.
well, we got.
So we have,
We make our own rules, though, I mean, we can. waive it.
Right.
Those-
We have
those are-
another
it's not
application.
statutory.
I follow.
Okay, well, this is the email that we got from Joanne on March 25th. So it says there's a planning board member who serves as the chair, board of selectmen, budget committee. In addition to these members, the planning board shall appoint at least 3 at-large members
Okay.
from the community
At
serving
least,
for 1
at
year.
least, At least, that's the,
Yeah.
that's my,
So there's nothing that prevents us from doing more. We just shouldn't have done an even amount last year.
yeah, although, in fact, it doesn't matter.
I disagree. If it says at least, it means 3 is your maximum. You
No,
can
no.
appoint 1, 2,
No.
or
3
3.
or more.
Three or
No.
more.
At
At
least
least
3 at-large.
At least 3 is a minimum.
It didn't say no more than 3. It said
Yeah.
at least 3.
But the total number of
We're
CIP,
in court right now.
CIP members is an odd number.
And the
But-
odd number is a definitive number, because that way you can have a tie-breaking vote.
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
But in fact,
Nobody ever votes against it.
CIP is not, it doesn't matter, because all it does is make a recommendation. It's not acting in a adjudicatory fashion. So it could come to this board with a tie vote, because the CIP, the committee is advisory only. It recommends a program to this board, which then adopts it. So this board should have an odd number, although some meetings it doesn't. But the committee itself.
we just have odd members.
Yeah, so the committee itself,
Speak for
we could
yourself,
come to you and say,
Bob.
we're split on something, and you
Prerequisite
still
for
assess it.
membership.
So I don't think that's important. In fact, it acts,
Do what you want,
historically, it's
Jim.
acted by
I'm
consensus.
not gonna fight it anymore.
No.
So
Okay.
how many members did we have last year?
We apparently had 8.
Yeah.
All right, so who do we have that's how many people do we have interested in serving on this committee?
So we have
Not
one-
including Kimberly, because
We have
Kimberly.
one other person, Brian Mazer, who's put in an application.
So if we put Brian and Kimberly back on, because Kimberly said she wanted to do it again, it keeps it at odd, and we meet the 3, it's just 5 community at large.
Correct.
Please, this is an open
Right.
forum, no hands required.
The size of the group last year was appropriate. It's, we always had a quorum, we very seldom had somebody, we had one person, Kimberly was on vacation, and Richard was unable to come to the budget committee a few times, but it's well attended. My preference as a board, as a chair, is to have a number that's not too large, who are involved, attentive, get the point of the CI committee, which is to recommend, based on the staff presentations, a schedule of the capital improvements. It's not a political board. It's not it shouldn't act as saying we like it or not. That's a decision by the budget committee, the select board, the school board, and the voters. So I don't want to make it too big of a committee. It's just my preference as how I run that committee.
Board members, what are we doing? Barbara?
I'm just going to say that from the time I first served on CIP, and I'm too old to remember how long ago that was, the CIP committee has changed dramatically. The length of time that it looks forward into projects has changed. Some of the criteria has changed. And it used to be that the CIP committee would actually make recommendations on projects and say, no, as a community group and board members, we're sort of saying either no to this, take it out, move it out, and it's really become a balancing act for future years, which has value as to requested projects. And I appreciate the chair not wanting a big committee, but we just appointed somebody new who came in who wanted to go to the Regional Planning Commission, because we have we sort of have unlimited, we can appoint alternates. And it's going to be my preference to make it 5 community members at large. That still solves the 3. I appreciate the chairman's position, because, Gail, how long have you been on CIP? Okay, and Brad?
Last year was first year.
Was Brad the first
No,
year?
second year.
No,
Second
No,
year.
he's been on a couple of
Second
years,
year.
and then I think Steve is new, or how long?
Dan.
Danielle?
Dan.
Dan.
Yeah, last year was his first year.
Last year
So
was
I just sort of, I've gotten to the point, listening to people from other communities and this communities, if I've got people who've submitted applications to be on boards, especially if they're advisory, I'm sort of like, let them on, because unless there's a rule that prohibits it. So that's just sort of my drift
Well,
on
as long
it.
as they're qualified, I mean.
Well,
they
a
have
sense,
They have some knowledge of the business of the board, of the CIP.
well, since when do we get to, I mean, I guess, do we have a process where we interview people for qualifications for boards? Or do we invite community members who are interested in learning about the community from volunteering on boards? Because that's how I learned, is I ran for a board and I didn't know anything about the town, and apparently I would have been unqualified for it. So are we going to start as members doing that? Now, I understand by statute, the school board has the authority to interview and pick, and certainly as a planning board, I suppose we can, but you just heard that this is an advisory board.
So are you saying we should just continue to expand it as long as we have people who want to serve on it? And that's what I'm hearing.
No, what I'm hearing is that we had a board that we didn't even realize had an odd number last year that was in violation of our own rules. Even number, and that person would like to serve again, so I'm suggesting that we have a volunteer who wants to be on it, that would bring it to the odd number. That is what our rules say we're supposed to be.
What was the alternate that you were talking about?
That was for Southern New Hampshire Planning.
He's actually not an alternate, he's.
Is he a regular member? Did he take Hank's place?
He did.
Yeah.
Let's talk about CIP right now.
Well, I remember when when Michael became an alternate to the planning board and the questions that this board asked of him at length. So I think there is some sort of interview process, so to speak, quote unquote, based on my experience. I'm going to do whatever Jim wants to do because it's his committee. And I'm not going to mess with this committee.
Because you don't want to go on Wednesday or December. Yeah, I know, we just did a lot of work.
You've already motioned for
We took care of the chair.
the chair.
We're talking about the community at
So-
large members.
The community at large would be Gail, Kimberly, Brad, Daniel.
And if Barbara
And if
gets the fifth
Brian.
person on, it's
That would be Brian.
Brian Mason.
We have a selectmen's rep. I don't know who the school board or the budget committee
Doesn't,
reps
those,
are.
the
We don't have any
the
control.
budget committee didn't send one for a few years when I ran, so, oh well. This is probably-
Who is it? On the
So
budget
at this
committee?
point, let's get this discussion over with.
I'll make a motion to reappoint the people who were on before.
I'll second
And
it.
you can decide differently, but that's a good group, and I'd like to work with it.
So there's a motion by Jim to reappoint the prior committee.
And I'll second it.
Motion by Jim, seconded by Karen.
Can I vote or do I have to abstain?
You can vote.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
How many does that leave? Does that still have
That's
the
8
same
members.
four?
That's 8 members.
You're the same
Is it the
members.
same four that
It
we
is,
were?
Yeah, I want them all back on.
So this is a motion to make it four?
Well, it
instead of-
is, yeah.
So it's not an odd number?
If you want to go from there, that's your choice, but I want them back.
But I just don't know how
just
are we voting
So what?
for an
There's no
even
financial-
number when our regs say,
We're amending we're waiving our regs,
Like you
because the
should
chair
vote
would
on
like
that.
us to.
well, then I think that we should have a motion to waive the regs first.
Okay, I'll move to waive our, actually, they're not even regulations, our handbook is just a guidance document. but
I'll second it.
I'll move to waive
We
the
already have a
handbook.
motion
Wait,
and a
wait a minute.
second.
Don't the handbook say you have to appoint at least 3?
It
doesn't-
does, yeah, I don't.
It doesn't say odd numbers, it says at
I'm
least 3.
not sure
No,
that
there
it
is
does.
something in there about.
I think Karen read it in the
Read that
email.
again, Karen.
Yeah,
Oh, it does say it has to be an odd number?
yeah, it says,
Mr. Chair, we have a motion and a second. Can we move the question, please, to a vote?
Who made the second?
Well, we already have a motion on the table, and now
Right.
Phil wants to have another motion.
No, we have a
well,
motion on the table.
Yeah.
I just asked a question.
So, but then
The
Jim, you
question-
said you wanted to waive the regulations, so.
Well, no, I don't think we
No, no,
have
no.
to, it's our handbook, I didn't.
All right,
I go around all the
so
time.
let's vote on
Who
the
knows what's in
motion.
there?
You just run the
Vote on
meetings and do the
motion
work.
To reappoint the prior committee.
And the prior committee consists of
8
four.
members,
8 members, no.
4
Well, I think
community at large
technically,
members.
we appoint the 4 community at
Yeah.
large. I think that's what we're doing.
yeah.
But
All right.
I guess that's my question, is that we're in violation of a reg,
Okay,
They
no,
aren't
not,
regs.
it's not a regulation.
Yeah.
of our rule,
No, it's a handbook.
Yeah.
It's a handbook, it's not even a rule, it's a handbook that we.
our
We're not
guidelines.
violating
Okay.
anything.
I'll accept
All
that.
right, so all those in favor of the motion to reappoint the prior committee, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So how many ayes was there? There was 4 ayes, so
3
the motion
noes.
passes, 4 to 3.
Okay, I get the people I want, so it's up to you what you want to do from there.
All right,
There are- with,
Okay, and now we need an appointment to the EDC.
oh,
Karen is
that's a fun
interested.
appointment.
I really enjoy it, actually.
Great,
It's a fun little time.
it was a fun little time, as long as you can stay awake.
It's only an hour.
I know.
oh, they have a set time?
Yeah,
Well, not really, but it ends up to be an hour.
yeah. It's
Okay,
only an hour,
so,
it's
does
fun.
anybody want to make a motion to appoint Karen to EDC?
I'll make
Usually.
that motion.
So Barbara's made the motion
I'll
to
second
reappoint
it.
Karen to EDC.
Who do we have for applicants?
There's no applicant.
It's someone
I
from
mean,
this board.
Someone
Yeah.
from this board goes.
Oh, yeah, from this one, I'm sorry.
And who was,
What, did
Barbara
you
made the
want it?
motion, and who seconded it?
Phil seconded it.
Good enough to do it.
Okay, motion,
He can't.
motion
hear
to
that.
reappoint
I
Karen.
know, I know.
To bring refreshments.
But I
to
just
the
think,
planning.
No, I do think so too, yeah.
Hey,
Quiet down.
hey,
I gotta go.
Motion to reappoint
I heard
Karen
refreshments. Who's
EDC.
bringing refreshments?
Hey,
All right, come on, let's go. I gotta go home.
I haven't had dinner.
Aye.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Motion to adjourn.
Opposed,
Sorry.
abstentions.
No, we have one other item.
My bad.
What's the other item? Oh, the joint ZBA?
Yes. I brought it up at the last meeting, about the, whether we should include the ZBA members in our discussions when we have zoning amendments put on to the ballot.
Oh, for the
Because we generally get all our recommendations only from the zoning and code enforcement officer. And the zoning board of adjustment members, I think they have a right to speak for themselves, and that's why I brought it up. Jim?
Well, I mentioned last time, they don't have a statutory role in zoning amendments. We do.
Yeah.
It comes from us. So they are essentially like any
Advisories.
advisory board. But it would be useful, once we have our proposals, staff comes forward, to allow them to comment on it. But I'm a little hesitant to just say, what do you guys want to do? You know, have a meeting.
That's not what I was.
I know, I'm trying to flesh out how this would work.
Fine.
That it would be useful to get comments and they can always submit through Joanne if the board wishes to, you know, the issues
Who wants to
that they
spend
sub-
time sitting around writing a bunch of stuff out to give to Joanne when you can't
Well,
come and
but
speak
whose
yourself?
time
I
is
don't.
gonna get wasted then if they haven't done that? I don't wanna waste my time.
I think it's helpful to ask them, at one of their meetings, because what they're finding that people are coming in for on a regular basis, very often, where if it's the same thing over and over again, that's something that you should look at the regulations and see, does this need to change? And I'll give you one example. You have to have a front, so if you're on a corner, you have to have a front setback on the front and a front setback on the side that faces the street. Which really doesn't make any sense, because instead of having in one zone a 10-foot setback, now you need a 25 setback from the street itself. I'm not sure what the reasoning was for that, but it seems that it's causing problems for smaller lots, that they then need to go to the zoning board to get a variance for that. And it seems like it's kind of strange, because there's no one over here that house would be bothering, that it has to be, further away than it would be normally if it was just a house in the middle of the street. Could it be something to do with sight distance? I mean,
Well, we don't need to get into the specifics, but it's just the process by which those are brought to us.
well, that's what I'm trying to find out.
And if the ZBA has those,
Right.
they can tell you. We don't need to sit as a group and listen. I'm trying to be efficient with our time and their time. And we can then work with it and go back to them for further comments. But I don't want to start having group meetings or just general discussion meetings early on if it can be handled more efficiently. We already spent enough time here.
Phil?
Along that process, in the past, at some point, I don't know when it changed, but the code enforcement officer who attends CBA meetings and is the one that has to deal with making these decisions and the violations and stuff, was the one that looked at this and would come back and make those suggestions, like we're getting a lot of these kinds of requests, and looking at it, and because they look at it, they have to make decisions and tell people whether or not they have to go to the ZBA. And Ed Nephew used to do that. Ed would come back and he would say that, we're having X, Y, and Z, a lot of these, and he would see an issue and he'd come back and he'd bring it up.
Well, I also think that we don't have a code enforcement officer now. We're trying to hire one in a hiring crunch. And I imagine that a code enforcement officer starts working on next year's zoning amendments sometime this summer. So, if we haven't even hired someone and it's summer, do you think someone who gets hired is gonna be worried about next year's zoning amendments? They're gonna be worried about getting acclimated to the
Well,
job.
Tim, if I could just follow up.
Please.
The point I was trying to bring up is, okay, is that what comes before the ZBA,
Yeah,
to me, it would just seem that a review of what came before the ZBA, some of those things, if they were ongoing things, planning coordinator would have an idea of some of these issues.
yeah.
And that could be where suggestions come up. You know, there's an issue because of a certain particular thing. I could bring up a couple of ones, but I don't want to start going on
think it's-
chickens and stuff, so.
Roosters.
No roosters.
Right.
Barbara?
I suspect we could ask Patty what the most frequent
Well, yeah.
topics of discussion are at the ZBA, and she could probably give us a list.
Because they have to give a written decision.
Let's start
You've got a record.
So I think if I hear from everybody, it seems to me that if we were to do our zoning amendments lists, discuss them, and ask the zoning board of adjustment members for comment on what has been presented by the code enforcement officer, that would be an appropriate avenue for the planning board?
And didn't Al Eaton come in before, isn't he on the zoning board?
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Al came in and made comments on.
He
some
made
stuff.
comments on a proposed change that we had.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
And FAQs is a great place to start, frequently asked questions. What do we get the most questions on?
yeah.
That's where we ought to focus our attention.
Okay.
How to use the website.
As long as it's up to date.
What's the internet?
All right, so we're gonna sort of let this dog go to bed.
Motion to adjourn.
Anything else from our
Oh, yeah, I guess we
esteemed department head?
I second the motion
What?
then.
Kathy will chase you down.
Oh, Tim, I do have a plan.
Are you
for
done?
to sign.
Motion to adjourn has been made by Phil.
I'm afraid of Kathy Ball.
Phil, are you gonna be on the front page of the Monitor tomorrow, the work you're doing?
No, that's the Chronicle,
Did we vote?
27th.
Do we vote
Are we
yet?
The air
adjourned?
date.
We're having a discussion other than the motion, so I'm gonna wait for the discussion to end, and then we can.
Poor
take
Tim
the
is ready to
vote.
kill us tonight. We are a little bonkers.
Everybody is really talking out of turn at this meeting tonight.
You said, what
If
did
this
you
is how we're gonna run it, then somebody else can run
I
it.
think Gail is
I vote
completely
aye.
in her lane.
Aye, on
Okay.
Phil's motion
All
to
those in
adjourn.
favor of Phil's motion to adjourn, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Good night.